Stephanie Dobson is back with us this week. Stephanie is a lawyer and mediator at Hankett Divorce Law and Mediation here in Lloydminster. And we're switching topics now for the rest of this month in October, Stephanie. So before we get into that, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me again, Stacey.
Well, we're going to be discussing interspousal agreements today, Stephanie, and I'd like you to explain what this is, and especially compared to a separation agreement.
So I use the term interspousal agreement really as a catch-all phrase that's an agreement that's between two spouses. So it might be in the context of two people at any given stage of their relationship. So it's not specifically relating to separating spouses. It could be relating to spouses who are about to start living together, maybe who already live together, those who are about to be married. People like to use the word prenuptial agreement, or even to those for those spouses who have already tied the marital knot. So if we want to just think about it as, like I said, as sort of a bit of a catch-all, and you asked how it relates to a separation agreement. So a separation agreement, in the terms, the way that I use it, a separation agreement is a type of interspousal agreement, but it only relates to couples who are actually going through a separation or divorce.
Okay, so now with this, even spouses who plan to stay together can get an agreement like this drafted. Why would they want to do that?
Well, a lot of people have probably recognized that sometimes at the start of a relationship or during a relationship, couples tend to have the best of intentions towards one another in an attempt to preserve the relationship. And so often spouses will promise things to one another in relation to maybe what could occur if they did separate. So for example, we agree that if we separate, we would waive our right to such and such, or that our ability to divide up the such and such is going to be limited. Quite often, though, when separation occurs, those promises, which a lot of them will just remain verbal, tend to be forgotten or pushed to the side, or nope, that never did happen, or they may even be discovered to be legally unenforceable. So I highly recommend that spouses or people who are about to be spouses enter into some kind of a written interspousal agreement in order to crystallize those agreements that they plan on making or that they have made already, to make sure that those agreements are enforceable at law.
So what kind of things can go into an agreement like that, Stephanie?
So there's really no set topics. The way I describe it to my clients is we start out with a blank canvas, and we can construct the terms of that interspousal agreement exactly how they would want. But of course, there's typical topics. So let's go into those. So the first typical topic, most people will come to me saying, I'm in a relationship and I want to preserve my assets for in the event that we separate. That's mostly what people will come to me asking about. So an interspousal agreement can specify how assets or debts would be divided, or alternatively will not be divided in the event of a separation. And there's lots of laws relating to property division specific to each province. So it's really important that you set these out in that written form to make sure that it conforms to that legislation, so that at the end, when you're looking to carry out these provisions, that it's actually enforceable. Another topic would be spousal support. So couples may want to specify whether spousal support will be payable in the event of a separation, and if so, what would the terms of that agreement be? So this can be very difficult to enforce, and so it's really important that the particular wording get put into a interspousal agreement to make sure that you have the most likelihood of something being enforced. Third, we want to talk about the children. Now, it's very difficult to put in any kind of terms with respect to signing off on rights with respect to children, or presupposing what you're going to do with respect to parenting time or any of those sorts of things. But what I like to talk about in an interspousal agreement relating to children is, especially if you're planning on staying together, what are the kind of things that you would want to do while you're together as it relates to the upbringing of the kids? Is there a division of labor that you want to see? Is there a type of communication that you want to plan for? And so again, we start with that blank canvas. And with children, I recommend that we actually look at what arrangements you would want to do while the relationship is still there.
If couples are wanting to do something like this, Stephanie, can they just write it up on their own, back of a cocktail napkin kind of a thing? Or should they get a divorce professional or a lawyer involved when they have this agreement put together?
Well, of course, my recommendation is going to be a very cautious one, and to say that the best practice is to have a lawyer draft the terms of that interspousal agreement for you. And when I say that, it's not at all intended to be self-serving, although it sounds very self-serving. Rather, it's because the requirements of these agreements in order to be legally binding need to be are very specific, as far as the wording, as far as the signatures that need to go on these to make them enforceable. Because the last thing that you want to do is to literally have your agreement on the back of a paper napkin, and then at the end, when that trigger point has happened, for example, separation has happened, and now you look back and you say, well, this back of the paper napkin agreement is what we agreed to, but yet then it turns out to be not enforceable. As you can imagine, there's a lot of law around the enforceability of these agreements, and there are people who challenge these. I've entered into an interspousal agreement and I want to challenge its enforceability. I don't want to happen what I signed off on. So it's really, really important, at least, even if you have the terms of the agreement, the content of what you want to agree to, certainly you can bring that paper napkin to the lawyer, but I don't recommend at all that you leave it at the paper napkin stage.
All right, Stephanie, great advice as always. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will be back again next week.
Thanks, Stacey.